Welcome to the CURES Show, where we explore the cutting edge of wellness. I'm Kara Sundlin. The new year is certainly a great time to kickstart positive family resolutions that we can do to keep our crew happy, healthy, rested, and connected. And who else but Dr. Harvey Karp, the world-renowned pediatrician and child development expert, to help us do that. He's also the author of the best-selling The Happiest Baby on the Block, and also the creator of the SNOO, which we'll talk about. And he's here to talk about at least 4 things that we can all do that really don't cost money and can make a huge difference. So thank you for being with us, Doctor. Great to see you again, Kara. So for those who aren't familiar, if they're going, how do I know Dr. Karp? I was a big reader of The Happiest Baby on the Block. I was lucky enough to have a doula here at Hartford Healthcare who taught me the 5 S's, right? So you've been for years teaching people practical things that really help families and babies do much better.
You know, the 5 S's, it's part of this thing in the video, The Happiest Baby on the Block. And basically what this new discovery is that babies are born kind of with an off switch for crying and an on switch for sleep. It's called the calming reflex. And when you imitate the womb experience, those are the 5 S's. That swaddling, the side or stomach position, never for sleep. We only want them on the back for sleep, but for calming crying, the side or stomach works best. Then shushing, swinging, and sucking. And when you mix those together with just enough energy, oftentimes you're able to calm a crying baby in seconds. And so that's become, we teach parents about feeding babies and breastfeeding and all of those important things. But this is really the way to teach parents, give them the skills to be able to soothe their baby effectively and to help promote sleep.
Yeah, and then once I get a little older, I have teenagers now, which I love that when I've had the opportunity to interview with you before, you mentioned that the happiest toddler on the block also could be good for our teens, but their little meltdowns. But one of the resolutions you say as a family, which I would love to do more of, you said we should read together more often.
Right. You know, in your introduction, you said things that don't cost any money, and it turns out that there's so many things that we could have learned from our grandparents that are simple, easy to do, inexpensive steps that can make a big difference in your child and in your relationship with your child. And so one of those things is reading together. Bedtime routines, of course, people do that all the time, where they cozy up and they have a chance to just have that time together and get lost in the fantasy of a story. And you can start that even when your child is very, very young, even in the first year of life. Reading and singing gives that message to the child that this is the slowdown period, and I love you so much, and I'm going to always be there. You can trust me. And then as they get a little bit older and they want to learn how to read the letters and read the words and then ultimately read chapter books, that becomes this warm memory that no one can ever take away from them, of having their mom or their dad or their grandparent or whoever the caregivers are, have that close relationship. And we know that reading with kids also will lead to better schoolwork, better confidence, and ultimately greater achievement in life. So it's such an easy thing to do, and it has such dividends.
Yeah, and you say even reading aloud for a few moments is worth it. I know parents will think, gosh, I don't always have a lot of time, and it's hard to get everyone together, but just a few moments a day, a few minutes a day can make a difference.
It really can. You don't have to hammer yourself, well, I should do this, I should do that. And but here's the thing with young children is they can't tell time. They build their lives around routines. When they see you cooking in the kitchen at nighttime, they recognize it's about dinner time. When the lights are going down, they recognize it's about sleep time. And when you do a bedtime routine, brush your teeth, wash your face, turn down the lights. What I recommend is turning down the lights, turning on some white noise, and then cuddling up and reading together or singing or saying your prayers, whatever your routine is going to be. That becomes something that helps them to understand, now I'm going to go into sleep. It kind of eases them into it.
Yeah, yeah. The other thing that's simple, and we don't do this enough either, is getting outside daily. Here in Connecticut, we're about to get a snowstorm, but this is really a great thing to get out there, maybe build a snowman, go sledding. It can really make a difference for the well-being of the family.
Yeah, you know something, when children, I would often joke with my patients that bedtime begins at breakfast, because if you set the day up well, then sleep is a much easier process. And we all know, adults and children, we're all struggling with getting enough sleep. And there are some things we'll talk about, ways that we can help kids sleep better and adults can sleep better. But it starts in the morning, a good breakfast, avoiding caffeinated drinks, so tea, obviously coffee for children, but cola drinks, decongestant medicines. If you have to take them early in the day, because decongestant medicines can interfere with sleep. Dark chocolate is another one that can interfere with sleep. So that's the first step. The second step is getting outside. And when you get outside, the fresh air is invigorating. It gets your muscles moving. And of course, the more you exert your energy during the day, the tireder you're going to be at night and the better you're going to be able to sleep. But there's another thing that happens when you go outside. The sunlight turns off the melatonin in your brain, which is the natural sleep hormone. It gives a very clear signal that now is the time to be awake. In fact, we physicians recommend this to people who are traveling, who might have jet lag, that when you're trying to get onto a new time zone, get out in the morning, get as much sun exposure as you can, and that resets your brain. And so that will shut off your melatonin. So later on, when it comes on, the brain sees a very clear signal that it's time for sleep. And listen, thank goodness it's snowing out there, and it is the right time to get out and build a snowman or have a snowball fight and just really, really enjoy.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I'm going to just, for the older kids who like to sleep in, sometimes you're balancing like, let's get up and get some morning air, or let them sleep. Is it good to let teenagers sleep until they wake up?
Yeah, it's such a good question, because teenagers go through different phases where they may be night owls and they may stay up later and then want to sleep later. The most important thing is getting your sleep. If you get sleep, you're less irritable, you can learn better, you're less angry. Everything kind of is better. Your whole mood is better if you get sleep. So if you've got a teenager who wants to sleep in, especially on the weekends, absolutely, I would allow that. But the trick is trying to limit the screens at night. So I mentioned melatonin. So melatonin is this natural hormone that's released in the brain when the sun goes down, when it gets dark. Now, of course, we turn on the lights in our house, so that fools the brain, or we watch TV or we watch screens, which has a bluish color light, which specifically turns off melatonin. And it confuses the brain and says, well, I'm not really sleepy, even though it's 2 a.m. I'm not that tired, because you've been shutting back your normal sleep kind of entry into sleep. If you can imagine it this way, the way it used to be thousands of years ago is we would all be around a fire, and that red light would get orangey and darker, and that naturally leads us to start falling asleep. So you want to create something like that at home, meaning turn the lights down in the house an hour before bedtime. Turn on a rumbly white noise an hour before bedtime, just so it's in the background, and that signals to the brain that sleep is starting to come. Don't have too big a meal at night, because for some people that also interferes with falling asleep. Lower the temperature a little bit. It's easier. Warm up the bed. It's nice to have a warm bed, but you fall asleep a little bit better when the room is a little bit cooler. Some people like to take a hot shower or a hot bath before they go to bed. Again, that kind of prepares them. But for the teenagers, it really is like, we got to set a limit. We have to have an agreement that this is when the phone has to get turned off, because otherwise that's just going to defeat the whole purpose and push them to stay awake later and later.
Yes, absolutely. And that's really your third point.
Easier said than done.
It is.
Easier
Thank you
said
for
than
saying
done.
that, doctor. Yes, it is years. That was your point 3, is prioritizing rest. As moms, we need the rest, or we're not going to be very effective. And then our kids need the rest, or they can't be effective. So we really, but also you say this is really important. Just prioritizing rest is really important for us as a family, because everybody feels better, but we're also doing things at our brain, like consolidating memories and improving our vocabulary, our attention, everything.
You're right. It really is a vitamin. It's vitamin S, and it helps you in every direction. It helps your body recover from the day. It helps to consolidate your memories, like you said, and it helps to keep you healthy, and it helps you be ready to learn the next day. And that's not just for older kids. So you mentioned SNOO.
Yeah.
SNOO is a little baby bed that rocks and shushes and secures babies with a special swaddle. So it's the safest swaddle, and it secures to the bed so they cannot roll to an unsafe position. Because as you know, thousands of 3,500 babies, healthy babies, die every year in the United States. Most of them when they roll to an unsafe position or when they're brought into bed with their parents. And what SNOO does, and now it's the first baby bed that's authorized by the FDA for safe sleeping, keeping babies safely on the back, because by preventing the rolling over, the goal is to keep them safely on the back. But in addition to that, the rocking and the shushing imitates the womb experience. And the bed doesn't just rock and shush all night, but when the baby cries, it rocks and shushes more, imitating what you would do with a baby in your arms. And so anyone can rent this for $5 a day. It's the cost of a Starbucks, basically. But what I'm excited to tell you is thousands of parents now get this for free from their employers, like JP Morgan Chase and Snapchat and Under Armour and many, many other big companies give it as a benefit to support the families. And we're working with insurance companies now so that everyone will have access to this, much the way they have access to a breast pump. Because when you rock and shush the baby all night, you can add an hour or more to the baby's sleep, which is why SNOO is now, I mean, we've measured 500 million hours of sleep, and it's even in the Smithsonian Institution as an innovation advance in baby health for the 21st century. So we're very proud about how this is now being used by families all across America.
Yeah, so you are the inventor of the SNOO. After you taught us the 5 S's, now you've got something that can help us with that. So if you want to find out if you can get this, what's the best way to get a SNOO?
Oh, anyone can come to our website. It's thehappiestbaby.com. And there's lots of information. We have a couple of million people coming every month just for the free information, reading about babies and toddlers and health. And learn about white noise and special types of white noise and what SNOO can do for families. I actually was retired, but I came out of retirement because I was so frustrated at the number of babies who were dying. And it isn't just that, you know, postpartum depression, marital stress, breastfeeding failure. So many things happen when you're exhausted. And we all know how tiring it is when you have a new baby. Yes. You should have people helping you. You should have an extended family there, but most people don't have that. So SNOO in a certain way is a little helper. And actually, even in the hospital, it's even now used in 165 hospitals all across the country to support nurses, reduce their labor by helping the baby stay calmer, and then helping improve the care of the mom and the baby.
That's wonderful. Also, there's something else you can get. Maybe I want to mention that the SNOO is one thing, but if maybe you have a shower coming up or you have something that you want for your kids, you have a little SNOO bee, and it's a white noise machine. I used to have a little baby sheep, but you have a SNOO bee.
Yeah, you know something, just to tell people about white noise, because it's confusing to people. It turns out that some people love to sleep in a totally quiet room. And with babies, we used to say, you know, tiptoe, the baby's sleeping. But it turns out that babies sleep best with rhythms. That's why, did you ever hear people say if your baby's crying a lot, drive them in the car?
Yeah, oh yeah, I used to have to do that with one of my kids because I guess it mimics the sound of what was in our womb, right? When you have white noise?
That's exactly right. Yeah, it mimics the sound and the motion. And so it turns out babies sleep much better immediately when you use white noise and motion and swaddling. But the sound, when we say white noise, people think about kind of a sound. But it turns out there are 2 types of white noise that have completely opposite effects on the brain. There are high-pitched sounds that get your attention, screams, beepers, alarms, someone shushing in that high voice. Not so great for sleep, but very good for getting your attention. We tend to fall asleep with low-pitched rumbly sounds. So the drone of a car, of an airplane, of a train, juga, 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 those things are what help you to fall asleep. So if you're using white noise and it's kind of irritating sounding, you might wrap it in a sweatshirt or a sweater to muffle it a little bit. Or we made Snoopy, which is a little white noise machine that has a night light as well, and the kids can get to pick their favorite color. It has specially engineered sounds that are rumbly and low pitch that are better for sleep. And it also has some settings to keep children meditative or slow breathing. Because the other thing we're learning is that when young children learn to control their breathing and breathe slowly, they naturally are able to reduce their levels of anxiety and stress. And we all know that that's a practice that every one of us can benefit from.
Yes. So it's easy, not easy, but simpler when they're a baby and we're doing this stuff to them. Once you have kids and you want them to learn meditation or learn breathing, I find you get more resistance. What's your advice to making sure our little bit older kids and even our teens can learn these life-saving skills?
Yeah, it's a great question because it all sounds good on paper, and then when you try to put it into reality, it doesn't necessarily work as easily as you think. Well, one thing is when you start them early, they just naturally understand it. So the thing with Snoopy is that it has breathing sound and coordinated light. So when they breathe in, the light goes up, and when they breathe out, the light goes down. And so even a 2 and a 3-year-old can start learning that, and you don't have to be guiding them. The little
biofeedback.
sleep machine, exactly. And they have ownership. They're doing it all on their own. So that's one thing that makes it easier for them to be able to do it. And that's the same thing for a school age kid. You don't have to look over his shoulder or her shoulder to say, let's do this breathing together now. You can just say, when you're ready, go in and you can do your breathing exercise. And you can link that to something that they want. In other words, if they want to go out and do something, you say, okay, we can do that, but do your breathing exercise first, and then we can go out. So it's kind of a, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. And I think that works a lot, even for teenagers. This is the deal. We make an agreement before you go out on the weekend or before, you get on Instagram after you did your homework. What I want you to do is 3 minutes of the breathing exercises, and that's the deal. And then you can get your phone and you can go on Instagram or whatever it is you want to do. It doesn't always work, but if you do it in that kind of respectful way, you often can get them to cooperate and help them understand. It's going to help you in school. It's going to help you in sports. All of the great athletes in the world use meditation and guided imagery and focus to be able to get that mental edge that makes the difference in terms of success and failure on the athletic field. And so if you have kids that are interested in the arts or into athletics, this is a way to kind of help them understand that you can sharpen your brain and even get better by not only working your muscles, but working this muscle up here.
Yeah, absolutely. There was just an article in the New York Times about getting in the flow state, that instead of getting on our phones after work, if we did a little project or a little craft, or even if you don't want to call it meditation, we get in that flow state and we feel better. So teaching that, we didn't learn, I don't know, I didn't learn that growing up. Something I've learned from doing years of interviewing folks like you, but so just having that language and those habits at home. The other habit that you would like us to do.
Can I just before we leave this, I want to give a couple of little tips
please.
that will help in terms of learning this relaxation. Because number one, when you're doing it, you might also turn on the white noise even while you're doing your breathing exercises, because that helps you not pay attention to the chatter and the clinking and whatever distractions are going on outside the room. The second thing is, it turns out that relaxing the face is the first step in relaxing the whole body. So letting the jaw drop a little bit so the teeth aren't clenched, making your face soft like a wet dish rag, excuse me. Those are first steps as you're preparing to relax. And the last point is breathing out a little bit longer than you're breathing in. That turns out to be very, very important in getting into that flow state and that low stress state. So it's a breath in, but the breath out is a little bit more slow and carried through. And that automatically changes what your nervous system is doing and gets you into a relaxed state.
Yeah. And these are great things, like you said, to teach every day or to make part of our routines as much as possible, because really hard to teach that in the moment. If your child's having a meltdown, it's not the time to say, you can say, let's breathe, but they might not do exactly.
Yes, but they're going to be able to do it. I mean, of course, that's when we want them to be able to do it, and for ourselves to be able to count to 10 and not fly off the handle. But the more you're practicing it during your calm period, the better able they are to kind of take advantage of that when they're having a challenging time.
The other, number 4, as we're talking about resolutions to make as families, and maybe we just do one of these, but these are 4 easy things, simple things rather, that we can incorporate and eat meals together. You said research shows that just having those regular meals can really bolster our child's well-being and even build their conversation skills.
I know it sounds too good to be true, but there are lots of studies that show that when you incorporate children in the meal preparation and eating, so take them shopping, help them pick out the food that you're going to have, help them prepare, work with you in preparing the meal or cleaning up after the meal, and sitting down at the table together. It's kind of amazing how that's been associated with happier kids, better schoolwork, and for teenagers, even more school retention, less likelihood of promiscuous behavior or early sexual behavior, better capabilities in getting into college. I mean, it is very broad because what you're building is that social intelligence, the sense of cooperation. I'm not entitled, just put the food on the table for me. I don't like what you cooked. Instead of feeling so entitled, they need to feel a sense of service and responsibility. And you naturally learn that when you're preparing the meal for everybody. And of course, compliment them, be appreciative for the work that they do. And then at the sitting down at the mealtime, and again, you may not be able to do this every night or for every meal, but if you make it a point to do it 2 or 3 times a week, you'll get the benefits from that. And then when you're talking at the table, sometimes kids don't want to talk when you ask big open-ended questions like, how was school today? Okay, I mean, that may not be what really kind of opens the conversation. So you have to think a little bit about topics that may be of interest, about music or about specific things they've done with their friends or sports. Whatever it is that engages their interest, ask them what they're listening to or what they're looking at or what they're talking to their friends about, to try to be able to just get that conversation going and help them learn the social skills about being polite at the table and participating with others.
Yeah, and so we shouldn't worry when you ask your kid, how was school? Fine. What'd you learn? Nothing. Just the idea of us doing this.
Yeah.
I like to ask my kids, all right, tell me something you're grateful for, because I'd like to teach them the practice of gratitude. And I do sometimes get the nothing.
Yeah.
And then
that little exercise is great, asking about gratitude, because, part of the deal for teenagers is to, you're the least cool person in the world. They have to separate from us. But I like your idea about asking about gratitudes. Another thing that people do is going around the table and talking about little upsets and little positive things. Not a big deal, but like, what was something that bugged you, and what was something that, you kind of liked, that kind of made you smile or made you happy. And that kind of breaks the ice a little bit, and you can have a conversation about that. And one of the things I find is helpful for parents is being willing to talk about their upbringing or what it was like for them or what it was like with their friends. Children sometimes don't know the family history. And the dinner time is a perfect time to share, oh my God, let me tell you what happened to cousin Ray when he was 15. And that kind of weaves together something that we lose a lot since we're not living in big extended families.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, especially our busy American families. I think maybe some other cultures have it better. But the other thing that I want to remind everyone, you're also saying it's time to get up to date on our immunizations, not just for your kids, but for yourself. Calling and just making sure, you said that would be a good time to just make sure we get our vaccinations.
Yeah, as we look at New Year's resolutions, number one, all of these things have an incredible possibility of helping and also cost almost nothing. And when it comes to immunizations, we know it's winter time, it's the flu season, it's COVID is going around like crazy right now. My daughter just got exposed with her little toddler, and her brother-in-law came to visit, but he probably caught it on the airplane. So there's a lot of that going around. So when you're out in public, no one wants to wear a mask, but it's a smart thing to do to protect yourself and getting your vaccine. So the flu vaccine is out, and that's very helpful, especially in terms of preventing serious disease, going into the hospital, and especially if you're over 50 or 60, that's really very, very important. The RSV vaccine for older adults, as well as the COVID vaccine for anyone who's over 50, obviously, depending on your amount of exposure and depending on your exposure to older people, you want to get these vaccines for yourself. Even though younger people have a lower risk of getting seriously ill with COVID and with influenza, they can pass it along to older, relatives, and that can be quite dangerous. So, and then for babies, there's an RSV antibody that in the first 6 months they can get. We're in the RSV season, and that's a lung infection, which is very hard on little kids. They get terrible wheezing. Oftentimes they have to be hospitalized. And that's something that is preventable by just taking a step to get the antibody. So speak to your doctor, but this is the time, and you can go into your drugstore and oftentimes get these for free or at very low cost.
Yeah, absolutely. We only have about a minute left, but since we're sitting with you, I just have to ask, what inspired you to write all these books and become such an expert on children?
I was always interested in unsolved problems. And when I was a young doctor starting out, we said that colic was caused by gas pains or stomach upsets or things like that. And the more I read, the more I realized that that's not what causes fussiness. What causes fussiness is too much overstimulation, but not enough rhythmic stimulation. The rhythms, the holding babies. And we all know that when you have a baby, you hold them, you rock them. And when they get upset, you shush and jiggle them more. And it became so interesting to me that how could we put a man on the moon and speak to India in 1 second on the telephone, but we couldn't figure out why babies cry. And it became especially important because crying babies can lead to child abuse and marital stress and postpartum depression. So that really got me curious and led me to 20 years ago, the first book on babies, and then the book on toddlers and all the rest.
Dr. Karp, thank you. It's always a pleasure to be with you. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. We're out of time, but the happiest baby on the block, people can go to the website, and I hope everyone finds a snoo near them. Thank you for being with us.
So great. Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year. Have a great day, everyone, and be well.